what's your name? Fucking Bailey. If you could check the Society one, I'll check the Oak Barrel one because we are live on Oak Barrel.
Woo!
Oak Barrel always gets there first. Maybe it's because I flicked the button 30 seconds before I flicked the Society one.
Oh, that's really generous of you. That's great.
Thanks, mate.
Always. Always.
That's all right.
I'll get some feedback from someone. It sounds like you, Scotty.
We
are live.
Beautiful. G'day, everybody. G'day, whiskey lovers, whiskey fiends, and whiskey wankers. This is another whiskey roundtable here on the Oak Barrel Facebook page, the Society Facebook page, and a few other places. We are joined by some regular guests tonight. We're absent one, Andrew Milne. He's off wining and dining VIPs as far as I'm aware, but we are blessed with a stalwart of the Australian whiskey scene who now has his own whiskey company, which we're going to talk a lot about tonight, Mr. Dan Woolley. Can we get a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen?
Have we still got Dan? It looks like
we've lost him. After all that, we lost him.
After all that applause, we've lost Dan, and we've lost him mid blink as well. It looks like.
Yeah, it looks good.
What are the odds?
While we're waiting, we're also joined. We'll
just call that his cocktail shaking face, right?
Yeah. Matt and Alex, I'll flick in a couple of messages. He'll be back. How are you guys? Oh, there he is.
I'm back.
Oh,
he's back. I said some really nice things about you just then that I'm not going to repeat.
Yeah, sure you did, mate. Sure you did.
He's lying.
I am lying. I think we should probably go around the grounds and see what's in our glass before we get into anything too serious. So if anyone wants to, take up the
Matt Bailey, kick it off. What are you drinking tonight apart from the tea in your Westwood cup?
I've got a cup of tea and I've got a glass of Ardmore. It's a throwback to Dan's old stable, but I thought I'd start with an Ardmore, start with a 66. Yeah.
Nice. I was drinking Ardmore the other night, actually, a Scotch Malt Whisky Society from the latest release.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Is that what you've got?
Yeah, well, it's not the latest release, but it is an Ardmore from a few months back. Yeah,
nice.
Farm salad.
Do you want to tell them what I'm drinking, Woolley?
That looks like Highwayman 2/3 peated new make spirit.
Hey,
that's a pretty good trick, being able to pick new make on site just by colour.
Yeah.
Funny that.
And Dan, what are you drinking? What you just? I saw you pop a cork off of Highland Park just then. What?
I have been drinking quite furiously lately. I've actually opened about 40 bottles in the last 5 weeks or so. I bottled batch 6 of Highwayman today, so that's what I have here. 67 bottles. 66 and 3/4 bottles. And that's what I'm getting into right now.
And Scotty, you're on Red Bull and what?
Red Bull and an Aston Morris Glenmurray. Because I know, Matt, we are loving the Society page here tonight, and it's illegal to run a live stream on the Society page without someone drinking a Glenmurray. So I'm going to polish this one off.
It's a very 2017 reference. Well done. That's quite good.
The gift that keeps on giving. And it's a good, obviously, the Aston Morris stuff comes from the boys down at Elysian Bar in Victoria. And it's not looking too pretty down there at the moment. So I hope they're doing all right. And I saw that they were doing some really cool live tastings and stuff coming up. So jump on their page and take a look. What exactly they were escapes me right now, but it was some pretty cool stuff with some international guests, I think. So I'm going to polish that one off in there. I think that's what they'd want me to do personally. So I'm going to take that to heart.
Yeah. All right. So do we kick it off with Woolley? Tell us about you and where you are right now.
Right now, I am at home after a long day with my puppy dog, having a quiet whiskey. Yesterday, I was in the distillery all day yesterday. We filled 3 casks yesterday, one of which was a super heavy char Apera 100 litre with peated new make, one of which was a refill American Oak X Bourbon Maker's Mark 50 litre with peated new make. And one of them was a little baby 10 litre super heavy char French oak red wine that I have filled with an unnamed low rye straight Kentucky bourbon at 55%. Before I put it in as well, I seasoned the little 10 litre cask with super smoky savory PX for about 6 weeks. And that'll be ready in a couple of months. Today, I filled another 100 litre super char Pera and bottled batch 6. So I've been pretty busy.
Okay. So for all those who are playing at home, Dan's got his own whiskey brand now and is making his own whiskey.
Yeah. Thanks.
Located in Byron Bay, I believe.
You can do the intro if you like. You seem to be doing a good job.
And you're making whiskey out of which distillery at the moment? On your own stills, right? I'm
making whiskey at the Lord Byron Rum Distillery. Good friends of mine, the Restle family, own the Lord Byron Rum Distillery. And I have my own mash tun, my own fermenters, and my own still there, which I bought from the Adams boys when they decided to turn their little Tasmanian distillery into the behemoth that they currently have.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got nearly 60 full casks. I've got currently over 100 casks. So I need to fill about 40 casks pretty quick. Released 5 batches, just bottled batch 6. I've got batch 7 and batch 8 ready to go. Late July, we're launching the website with all the merch. And yeah, that's me. That's me.
Cool. Judging by the reaction we got to just putting up a few teasers that this was going live tonight, I think there's a few people who know who Dan Woolley is, who they've met at various trade shows and fairs and shows and festivals over the years. But for people who aren't particularly familiar with you, Dan, do you want to maybe go back a step, say like your love of whiskey, where you got into it, but then also like Highwayman is a new thing. It's new for 2020, but it's got its roots back in a long way. And sort of what you were doing in the past 2 or 3 years to get to this point would be quite interesting.
So, excuse me, I've been working with whiskey for a hell of a long time. Boring a lot of people with my shit chat for a hell of a long time too. Representing a lot of different whiskey companies and whiskey brands. I first got into whiskey through my dad. My dad was a district court judge, and that expression, sober as a judge, rings very true when it comes to my dad. He used to see some really, really, really horrible shit on a daily basis. So he used to come home and have quite a large whiskey as he walked in the door, and then another one as he took his suit off, and then another one to sit down at, and so on and so on. And he used to drink lots of blended scotch as soon as he walked in the door, but then would have dinner and then afterwards would relax with a single malt, and used to make me nose and taste all of his whiskey at about the age of 11, 12, 13 and so on. And I really hated it until I got to sort of mid to late teens, and I really started to appreciate the depth of flavours that Scottish single malts displayed. Really unlike any type of alcohol or any drink that you'd ever come across. He used to drink Oban and Macallan. He used to drink a lot of Glenfiddich as well. He never got into the really heavy peated stuff, but he didn't mind one occasionally here and there, but he never really bought any or drank any at home. So I thought I'd be the opposite of him and really dive into the heavy peat. And then slowly started working with a lot of whiskey brands. About 12 years ago, I started working with a lot of whiskey brands. I worked with Glenfiddich. I launched Monkey Shoulder in Australia. I launched the Snow Phoenix and graduated from there to many other different brands. What most people would know me for is, of course, Lafroig. became the National Whisky Ambassador for Beam Suntory, representing my beloved Smoky Isla Lafroig, as well as a bunch of other whiskies. I formed a really, really great friendship in John Campbell, and I still speak to him a couple of times a week. I speak to him all the time, and I worked very closely with him and lived in his house inside the distillery, working at the distillery, learning a lot from him and learning a lot from a lot of people in Tassie, Mr. Tim Duckett and Mr. Bill Lark, and working with people in Japan and all the way around the world. And in 2016, I started filling my own casks around Australia and started to buy things like mash tuns and stills in 2018. And that was when all of my casks that were aging around Australia started to find their way on the highways and byways back into Byron Bay, where I'm located and where I make my whiskey. And that now is what we know as Highwayman. The first 5 batches were released in April, May, and batch 6, 7, 8 coming soon. And then before the end of the year, we'll see batches 9, 10, and 11 coming as well. Hopefully, if COVID can fuck right off, we can all get together and drink some and really enjoy it together. Isolation and lockdown hasn't been the most wonderful thing for any of us. It's hit me pretty hard as well. I've been really sick. I've had pneumonia. So that's why if you haven't heard from me or seen me in a while, I've been pretty sick for about 2 months, but I'm just starting to get back into it now the last couple of weeks. Hopefully I'll get back into the gym next week, maybe even this week. I have been developing a rather different stature, leading with girth through eating and drinking like Henry VIII.
Haven't we all?
Yeah.
Haven't we all through COVID?
Yeah.
I know that all I had to do was walk from my bed to my fridge. Like that was the only thing I had to do. It's the only responsibility I had was to feed myself, and I made sure that I did that pretty well.
I moved my fridge into the bedroom, made it easier.
Couple of quick comments here before we get too much further in. Quick g'day to Vicky Dahlenburg, friend of the stream, might be related. Love to see it. Mark Westmoreland, also friend of the stream, from Wolfburn Distillery, says, good luck, Dan, with all your endeavours. And Leroy Peterson says he wants it all, Woolley.
He wants it all.
He wants it now. I don't know. He didn't say that, but I'm going to say that for him. He wants it all. He wants it now.
And big shout out to Bob Akers and Seamus Carroll and Darren Howie and everyone joining in on the side as well.
Mark has just sent me a stilfie from Wolfburn.
A stilfie?
I don't know whether you can see that. A stilfie. It's a still selfie.
No, I don't like that word.
So that's what I was giggling at.
Right, yeah. It's just too close to, it's melding too many words and sounds a bit like stiffy instead of, it's getting too close to stiffy as a word.
Yeah. And no one sends them to Matt, so he's just a little bit upset about it all.
Yeah. They don't call him Dick Pick Bailey for nothing.
Sure. I'm really sorry. It's stilfy. It's been coined. It's a hashtag now. It's happening.
Okay.
Well, we're just moving right along on that one. We might come back to that after a few more drinks. Dan, you mentioned there, I think right at the start, there was a bourbon that you were sort of giving an extra finish to. But then you said you got all these casks. The batches that you've released so far, and they were directly through Highwayman website, if I'm correct, and they sort of went in about 5 seconds each. Those batches, were they from one site or a whole, plethora of sites, or what have the batches so far looked like?
So the batches so far, batch 1 has come from Redlands, Old Kempton in Tassie. Batch 2 came from a unnamed New South Wales distillery that shall remain unnamed until I release batch 11, just to really tease people. Batch 3 is Adams. Batch 4 is an Adelaide distillery, but it kind of could almost be known as 2 Adelaide distilleries, and possibly in the next 6 months, 3 Adelaide distilleries. I don't know. That's all I'm going to say about that. Batch 5, again, is Adams. Batch 6, 7, 8, and 9 is Adams, but I've really started to mess with different cask selection. And the first 5 batches have all been double, if not triple, matured. Batch 6 is one type of cask. Batch 7 is one type of cask. And batch 8 is one type of cask. So we're looking at a Pera, Tawny, and Bourbon for 6, 7, and 8. Batch 9 is kind of like my tweak on a traditional Scottish maturation style, I suppose, over the last 30 years. So as we know, a lot of Scottish distilleries start or do their main maturation in bourbon and then finish in sherry. I'm doing an Australian tweak on that. I've started it in bourbon and I'm finishing it in a Pera. So I don't know anyone that's really done it properly in Australia. I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate mail after saying that. But do you guys know of any Australian distilleries that have done a single malt, primarily bourbon and then finished in sherry and done it really well?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, Haley's Road did that for quite some time with the.
Sorry, I said did it really well.
Yeah, I was just no. You know what? You know what? That's
we've got him on his soapbox already. Good to see.
Okay, no, okay, fine.
Naughty corner.
Fine.
Now, naughty corner.
And so, but other than them, on a more regular basis or anything really that pops out? No, Scotty, sorry, you're about to say?
So Joadja's most recent release, their first paddock to bottle, had some bourbon cask and then they had a bourbon PX finish. And I believe Starward have experimented with it at one point, I think. But yeah. And I think you said some very nice things about the Redlands Old Kempton Distillery. And I know he doesn't have too much to do with it anymore, but Robbie Tucknett chimes in with G'day Knowledgeable Ones plus Matt, Scott and Dan. So we're going to ignore him for the rest of the stream, I think, which is quite good.
Hang on, I missed that. What did he say?
Alex, your ego's big enough. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I said it quite quickly.
Very quickly, yeah.
But so, I mean, like when we drill down, like this, Highwayman's doing all these things. There's all these different things that you're doing. Is the ethos just good whiskey? You know, whether you distill.
That's the only thing. I wanted to get into this because I'm not going to name any distilleries, but let's say distilleries that I've represented. I'd get whiskey lovers coming up to me and saying, you know, I really love their single cask releases. I really love their hard to get experimental stuff, but their everyday bottlings, and it's definitely not one of those Lefroy's that I'm talking about, but their everyday bottlings are just, they don't appeal to me. They're very bland. They're boring. And that really got me thinking that why, if you've got the chance to make whiskey, why release boring whiskey? It's just not something that I'm into. Like I want to make every single batch of Highwayman really interesting, really different, most importantly, absolutely fucking delicious whiskey. That's what I want to make. I want to make whiskey that I love drinking and that I can share with people that also love whiskey. That's what it's all about for me.
Is there anything you wouldn't do in terms of, I've just got no interest in doing that, like in terms of blends or American whiskey or refinishing other like things from other places? Is there anything that you like wouldn't touch?
No, if it was
apart
whiskey,
from gin.
Well, you answered the question. If it's whiskey related, I'm doing it. I don't really care. It's flavor driven for me, and as long as it's whiskey, I don't care. I have quite a few different experiments going on at the moment. I have a 20-litre cask, which is 1/3 Isla, 1/3 Japan, 1/3 Tasmania, and it's a tale of 3 islands right there. And it's, yeah, I tasted that with Dan Hutchins-Reid on Saturday, and it is coming along really, really nicely. I have a really weird, it came to me as a light toast virgin Armenian, or is also sometimes known Russian oak cask, which Alex actually was kind enough to make the introduction and sort out for me. And I took that cask and I seasoned it with tawny for a year. And then I filled it with heavily peated new make. So I have quite a few different things going on. Currently I've got a 100 litre virgin Cecil French oak cask with a light toasting, which I've got 100 litres of PX in, and I'll keep that 100 litres of PX in there for a year, and then I'll fill it with, I'm not sure if I'm going to fill it with peated new make or unpeated new make, but when it comes to experimenting, I have at the moment 14 different cask types. And I've got 20 litre casks, 25 litre casks, 35 litre casks, 40 litre casks, 50 litre casks, 60 litre casks, and 100 litre casks. I don't think I'll ever go over 100 litres because it just works really, really well. I will be probably gravitating towards sort of 40s, 50s, and 100s. The 20 litres don't even make it to 2 years in Byron Bay because the heat, humidity overcook them really quickly. So what I've been doing is filling, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6 20-litre casks at the same time, and then maturing them for about 18 months, tipping them, marrying them together, and then giving them a second maturation in a 50 or a 60-litre cask after that. And that works really well.
The 20s don't actually even work anywhere in Australia, from what I've seen, regardless of Byron or
not as a single cask anyway. I think they're too one-dimensional. I know Blackgate do a really nice marriage of, is it 620 or 720?
They had a few releases, I think, in that sort of realm. There was a 520s, there was a 620s. I don't know if there's been.
I actually really like them, and I find that the depth of flavour really works when you marry 20-litre casks together. Having said that, I think, you know, they do have a tendency to be, there's zero consistency. They're rather brash and really intense. I just don't think they work very well, the 20-litre casks, unless they're married together. Then they kind of fill in the gaps that other casks are missing and create a full picture. I'll never release a single 20-litre cask. That's just not something that I'll do. But, you know, if that's what other people are into, go for it.
Just on that, the 520s was the initial release because the Oak Barrel actually bottled the 620 litre as something else. And then the 620s was all of them together, but they actually, instead of blending them all at the end, they actually started blending stuff before it got to 2 years in the second case, which I thought was quite smart in the terms of that was looking like it wasn't going to last 2 years. So let's decant that into some of the other ones, which then had space. So managing it across those 620 litres, I thought was quite a good approach to take it, and turned out to be quite a cult product now. You know, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it was quite.
I like it. I like it, and they're great guys. They make great whiskey. Really lovely people.
So it's safe to say that you're not really going to go for a core range within your brand.
No,
I'm not. Okay.
No.
What is the main? So with your spirit, what you're running, are you going to do peated and unpeated, or continually peated? So
currently at the moment, I have about, let's say, 3,000 litres aging. And in production, we're producing about 250 litres a month. So it's definitely not huge. It's very, very small, but I don't know, we'll see. Probably 2/3 of that, probably 2,000 litres is unpeated and 1,000 is peated. The last 4 runs or so has been peated. I'll probably do 6 months of peated and 6 months of unpeated throughout the year, maybe. And then, I'm going to be experimenting with quite a few different cask types and different flavours to try and work out exactly what direction we're going to go in. But to be honest, there's only going to be delicious whiskey. I will never release something that I don't think is utterly delicious. I'll never release something that I think is okay drinking whiskey that kind of passes, that it needs to be outstanding. I'll never, ever tip a cask once it reaches 2 years and just bottle it and sell it. That's not something that I will ever do, and I believe that that is something that is being done at the moment in the Australian whiskey industry, and I believe has the opportunity to be detrimental to the industry in general. I hope we change that. I hope that more people are outspoken about it. What do you guys think about people that age a whiskey for 2 years, bottle it, and then sell it straight away? And obviously, it's not ready to go.
I don't know of any examples of that off the top of my head. I know there is quite a few 2.2, 2.5 year old whiskey out there. I just don't know of any that are sort of waiting for that 2 years and 1 day and then going. I'm sure it's happening. I haven't been paying that much close attention to it though. In that side of things, I would say.
Yeah, I think like for me, I've come across a few examples of that, and what you said there, Dan, that it has the potential to be detrimental. I think it's already been a little bit detrimental in some cases. It's not something we need to be worried. Something that's happening already. And it's not so much for, new distilleries themselves just popping up and that's their, first 5 releases, because they had no reputation to sort of build upon it. So people around them and regions and the concept of Australian whiskey as a whole, that has the, potential to be detrimental to, and it's potentially already being. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go too down that road. Because, I'm not a distiller. I'm just a wanker who likes to drink. But yeah, I think you're right. There needs to be a bit of quality control on that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I just think
what does that come? Yeah,
we're such a young industry. I don't even think, to be honest, that the Australian spirits industry is a proper industry yet. And I heard something really interesting the other day, that apparently by the end of the year there'll be more whiskey distilleries in Australia than there is in Scotland, which I think
I heard that we've surpassed Scotland in the amount of distilleries, not just whiskey.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it'd be really good to see some sort of quality control going in to make sure that this industry is here for the next 500 years, like it has been in Scotland.
And the only way to do that is sort of is really to sort of almost replicate the way that they've done it in Scotland. Is what it would be one way to be saying that we need an SWA style body, or we need a something like that to maintain protections and maintain quality and profile and output. Because I mean, it essentially boils down to 2 levels of quality control, doesn't it? It's sort of like we've got one, which is the greater industry, and as you said, it's not real. It's still very much formative years in Australian whiskey in many regards, obviously.
Yes.
But it's it's sort of, there's one level which is the top level control, but then there's another which is what you're doing, and every distiller should be, which is, as you say, you're assessing whiskey that you like to drink, and you're bottling it and going, that's a great whiskey. As you said, you're not going to release something that you're not utterly satisfied with.
Yeah.
And no distiller should. But it's that's a much more sort of personal choice. It's if you only enjoyed whiskeys that were heavily peated out of musket casks, it's like, well, then that's what you release. And that
sounds delicious, actually.
Whereas some people won't like that, and then there'll be other distilleries that only release refill bourbon unpeated whiskeys or whatever. And it's like, and so and that's why there needs to be perhaps the answer to that, I think long term is a governing body. I know Tasmania's been trying to do it for about 12 years now, about the putting together that the TWPA, or they keep rename it every 2 years. But yeah, I think on a broader scale, I don't think it's just a Tasmanian thing. I think it needs to be an Australian thing, and the mainland scene is growing faster than anyone has had time to even sort of think about those kind of.
Yeah.
I think that there's an element of, this is not a mainland thing, it's not a Tasmanian thing, it's also not a whiskey thing. It's still a young industry. We saw this with wine a long time ago, and when everyone wants to start a winery. So the cream will rise to the top, and people will react to what they react to. And getting back to sort of Highwayman in a little bit here, your first 5 releases have sold out in a collective about 20 minutes. So there's a little bit of the cult of Woolley. Probably, everyone wants to have Dan Woolley's first release, and I'm not going to say there's not a cult of Woolley. I was a cultist many years ago. Port Ellen's under the table will do that to you when you're 20 years old. How has the reaction been to to Highwaymen, in these first releases? Unfortunately, not getting out and being able to show them to people face to face, but just what you can see across internets and social medias and that sort of thing.
I've had no negative feedback whatsoever. Everyone that's tasted it absolutely loves it. And I've got to say, I made all this whiskey for people to drink. I didn't make it for people to collect. If people are collecting it, people are collecting it. I mean, go for it. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I can't judge anyone for collecting whiskey. I'm looking around my lounge room and there's over 1,000 whiskies here. So I'm trying really hard to drink them all. There's only so much that I can do. It's been really, really encouraging. It's been positive feedback. People are really, really enjoying the depth of flavour in all of the releases, and they're actually going through. There quite a lot of people bought multiple batches. There was 11 or 12 people that bought all 5 releases, which is a serious commitment. That's quite a bit of money for...
especially during that time as well. That was in the middle of a lockdown. And it's quite a financial investment. Especially
people, no one's ever tasted this whiskey before. No one's ever tasted it, and they're willing to throw down, $1,300, $1,400 on whiskey they've never tasted before. So for me, it's really, really encouraging and really humbling, and I'm really excited of what the future brings, and I cannot wait to share all of these amazing, incredible whiskies with everyone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've had a lot of people ask about when it's coming into either bars or retail, or is that something that you ever want to achieve, or is it just going to be this special batch release via your website?
Well, I think volumetric for the next year and a half. I've only got a very small amount. If you broke it down to a week, it's approximately about 40 bottles a week. I will sell more than 90% of that direct through the website, and I'll probably hand pick maybe half a dozen bars and a couple of bottle shops that will stock a very small amount of it. I just don't have the volume to be able to supply everyone at the moment, and it's something that will change probably towards the end of next year, I'd say. So the end of 2021.
Is that when we start seeing like what you're making come out?
No, that'll be the end of this year. Yeah. So the first casts I laid down were the 1st of September 2018, and I've been looking at that, and I actually think that should be ready for December this year.
Oh, cool.
Funnily enough, just in time for Christmas.
You can take the boy out of the marketing, but you cannot take the marketing out of the boy. A quick g'day to Nancy, who sends lots of love from the Whiskey Thief, and friend of the stream, Tom Scott.
Tom, I hope you have your happy face on whilst watching this.
Who says he's missing us, but also makes a good point that it's, we're a young industry and it's about scale. And once people get up and scale, then that'd be good. But we've been talking about Highwaymen, and I don't actually have any Highwaymen here with me at the moment. But I did notice that there was one Alex Dahlenburg that had a bit of new make or something Highwaymen related there. So should we throw you under the boat and get you to do a quick tasting for us with some very detailed tasting notes, of course?
I've already just gone on to Lafroig after having a little bit of it. However,
do you want to pretend like you remember?
Mezcal. I know that sounds crazy, but when there was a couple of us last night that had this lovely little present, as well as batch 7, I think it was, you sent us, Dan?
Yep.
So we were out to dinner last night and we cracked these around the table. And the one thing about this is it's just so beautiful and dirty. I know that is probably a terrible tasting note, but I actually am keeping this little bit because I want to run it round to someone and just go, tell me what that is. And I'm hoping they say mezcal. However, it's so sweet and dirty. There's my tasting notes.
It's so funny that you should say mezcal because two other people today that tasted it said that it reminds them of mezcal. And I think sweet, malty, dirty is like that's a really good description. It really is. It's got beautiful sweetness coming through. There's a really nice, almost creamy maltiness, but it gets dirty with sort of smoky grain as well. It has a humongous amount of depth, I find.
What percentage was this that you gave me?
55.
55. Okay. Yeah, it's delicious. I think I would tell it.
It drinks like water at 55.
Yeah, I was saying that.
Is that your fill strength, Dan? Is that what you're filling at 55? Yeah.
I'm filling at 55. Yeah.
Yep.
And tell us more about the malt build, or sorry, the malt that you used for your peated runs.
So it is 2/3 heavily peated Scottish malted barley from Baird's in the UK. The peat itself comes from up near Wolfburn Distillery, and it's a little bit coastal. There's not a lot of salt there, but it's like a dirty chimney, campfirey kind of smokiness. And it's also 1/3 local New South Wales malted barley because I want to, make it relevant, make it Australian. It's also a nice little tip of the cap to our Scottish forefathers. I am of Scottish heritage, and I firmly believe that if it wasn't for Scotland and the way that they make, love, appreciate and share their whiskey, that we wouldn't really have a single malt loving community or a single malt making industry around the world. So it's kind of a little bit of a sign of respect to Scotland, and also making it relevant to being Australian as well. It is like everything I do, it's flavour driven. It's all about flavour, and I think it's delicious. I really, really enjoy it, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of the casks over the next few years.
Cool. I was watching. Backstory. I got a FaceTime from Dan Hutchins-Reid, who was in your distillery on the weekend, and you guys were just about to do the cut. Can you talk about how wide or narrow your cuts are? And what's your format when you're doing it? Because I know that small distilleries do a lot by hand rather than, I call it by heart rather than by head, which is machine kind of thing. Or you get to a certain percentage and they cut it off, like alcohol percentage. How are you doing it?
So we do all of the above, no machines though, of course. We take ABV readings, temperature and hydrometer and thermometer, take the ABV readings. As it starts to get towards a certain percentage and temperature, I know that it's getting ready to cut. But the most important thing, more than my palate, is the nose for me. It's all about the nose. So I'll watch it as it's starting to come down in ABV. And then I will start to make my readings a lot more regular. Dan was there when I was doing it, and they were literally every 10 minutes I was taking a reading, and the ABV was changing quite fast. And then when it hits a certain level, then we start collecting the actual spirit in like big jugs rather than it going into a vat. So we can actually, if we make a mistake, we know that it's not going to go into the vat, and just nosing and tasting and nosing and tasting until we know it's exactly right, and then I make the cuts.
Cool.
Do you mind me asking about your relationship with Lord Byron, as in like how did that come about, and how many, like, do you get like a certain time per week that you get the stills, or how does that all work out?
Oh, he's got his own still, Jeffrey, right?
Jeffrey, yeah,
Jeffrey.
named after my father from the Adams. So they've got their own stills, they've got their own equipment, but the relationship with Brian came about through Bill Lark and Mark Nicholson, who I'm sure we all know very well, and especially Mr. Nicholson may be responsible for a few hangovers for a couple of us.
He's the best type of Father Christmas for me.
He is. He's the Taswegian Father Christmas that's always very generous with everything he does and all his information and all of his whiskey as well. He's just a wonderful human being. I love that man. And he and Bill actually said to me, they knew that I wanted to start my own distillery. And as most of us know, to really do it properly, you're going to need a solid $5 million to start off in a really small project. So I didn't have $5 million. I did have a little bit of money, and I wanted to invest that. They knew that I wanted to buy my own mash tun and my own still, and had already started putting barrels down. So they actually introduced me to Brian, because Brian had gone down with his wife Helen, and they did the distilling school down at Old Kempton with Mark Nicholson. And Mark called me and said, "You've got to meet this guy, Brian. He's starting a distillery in Byron Bay. Really lovely guy, lovely family. You should meet them, catch up, and see if maybe you guys can do some stuff together." So I met up with Brian, and Brian is about obsessed with rum as I am obsessed with whiskey. And he's got a beautiful little distillery there. And he said, "Well, why don't you make whiskey here? Because we're making just about everything except for whiskey. I have no desire to make whiskey. Why don't you come and make whiskey here?" And it's like, basically, in the eyes of the law and almost the way it works, he's basically contract distilling for me, but it's on my equipment, and I make all the cuts, and I do all the hard work. So it's not your traditional contract distilling. A lot of people that do contract distilling, they basically put an order in, and you get either spirit or whiskey at the end of it. It's not that with me. I actually make it all. So it helps them cover all of their costs, and it helps me in the way that I can make my own whiskey without having $5 million to invest into a distillery. So it's really cool. Wonderful. Yeah. And I really love and appreciate and really respect all of the help that the Restall family has given me and Lord Byron, because without them, I wouldn't be able to do what I do.
Matt Wilkie on the Facebook pointed out, and I think it was about the question that Alex, you asked about the mash bill. Thanks, Alex. That was a question I've been waiting to ask. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in. We're monitoring everywhere. We've locked him down. He's a busy boy, so you may not get too many chances to get it in there. And a few other comments just in there on just on distilleries in terms of being to scale up and starting small and that sort of thing. So that chat's going on in the Oak Barrel Facebook page. But I think with anything, and it's certainly true of what Dan is producing, whether it's 2 years and a day old or 25 years old, if there's love in the production, you can taste it in the glass. Doesn't matter where it is, where it's come from. And I don't really like talking too much about age with Australian whiskey, and I don't think we'll probably ever see ages on Highwayman releases unless you've got something quite special. But in terms of the Byron Bay environment for whiskey, we sort of know what Tassie does. We know what central west New South Wales does. We know what up north and out west and all those sorts of places. What is the Byron Bay climate like? It's a beach town. It's a coastal town. Does that play any effect in your barrel sitting up there?
I don't think the coastalness really plays a huge part. I haven't noticed a saltiness coming through. I have noticed a savoury note that's quite prominent with all of my whiskies, which is amazing. I really love a savoury whiskey, as I know all three of you do. The main contributing factors here would be the tropical climate. We're looking at really intense heat and humidity and massive fluctuations, not just on a daily basis, but throughout the year. It's unusually cold in Byron at the moment. I've been living here for nearly a decade, and this year is actually the coldest on memory that not only myself, but everyone that I know and everyone I speak to in this area. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact that has on the casks. I have taken a lot of my samples over to Scotland and Japan. And when whiskey lovers, whiskey bar owners, whiskey distillers taste the whiskey, I tell them how old it is, and they cannot believe that it's that old. A lot of people, especially in Scotland, when they tasted a few different samples of Highwayman, thought it was anywhere between sort of 10 to 15 years old. And when I tell them it's approximately 3 years old, they are truly shocked. So that heat and humidity definitely plays a massive part in accelerating the maturation. I suppose you could look at it in a similar kind of way that you would a Caribbean rum. 3 years in a Caribbean climate is going to give you a much faster product. And then if you look at the fact that I am, not using 200, 300 or 500 litre casks, I'm using smaller casks, 20, 35s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 100 litre casks, and then take it further and see that I'm a double maturing and sometimes triple maturing, I can get these products to market a lot faster, with the main goal being flavour more than anything else. But there is a downside to that. I am seeing those greedy angels taking anywhere between 8 to 12% a year. So I can get a product to market much faster, but I also have a much larger evaporation loss.
Yeah.
I need to just cut in here because there's a question. Irina Sim asks, apologies if this has been asked already, but is Dan wearing overalls?
Give us a twirl, mate. Give us a twirl.
I am wearing overalls.
What is this overall?
This is what I work in. Do you remember what work's like, Alex, before COVID? Yeah.
Absolute burn of the night. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it on the stream. I'm usually at the end of the burn. You say, this is a nice welcome change. That's quite good.
Actually, you're really right, because I haven't been back to the farm for 7 months. So yeah. I haven't actually had to do any hard labour, and majority of my work is at a laptop. So you're right. Yeah. So thanks for reminding me. I haven't been home in so long.
I now physically work. I roll barrels around, and I lift a lot of shit and move a lot of shit. And
you do real work.
You do real work now.
Right. No, I just want to clarify. Right. Yep.
Yeah. Not just flying around the world and hotels, and you're actually doing real work now.
That doesn't exist. Yeah, I just recently drove up to nearly up to Brisbane to pick up a ton of malted barley in the truck, and physically loaded 40, 25 kilo bags in there, and then physically unpacked them all. And yeah, whoops, this is my life now. This is what I love, and hence the overalls. Some smart ass prick saw me in Byron Bay today, and I know this guy, and I know that he doesn't have a job, and I don't think he ever had a job. And he looked at me and he went, "Nice onesie, mate. What's that?" And I said, "This is what you wear when you have a fucking job, mate." And his girlfriend absolutely laughed her head off. He was quite upset. So yeah.
If he's never worked a day in his life, I don't know how he could be upset by a comment like that. But okay.
yeah.
It's quite. I've never had a real job, and I'm pretty happy with myself. Doesn't matter what you say.
Just to change the subjects, has anybody come across Nico's AWAS Ben Riak yet?
Well,
but I hear it's great.
We are streaming to AOS as well, so it's probably good.
I have tried it. I haven't tried it out of bottle though. While you're pouring that, some comments here. Daniel comments that with the plethora of whiskies going around, and the finite elements of barrels, like real importance on the spirit that comes off the still, which sort of leans towards Bill Lark and Lynn Lark's famous saying, shit in, shit out, when it comes to whiskey. Doesn't matter how good your barrel is. G'day to David and or Caroline Taylor at Cradle Mountain there as well. And John said he could sit and listen to Dan speak for ages. Mate, please do not encourage him. I want to go home at some point tonight. So we cut that shit out right there, please, John. Thank you for your comment, though. While you're sort of, and I hope you got some tasty notes for that. Oh, there he is. That's what I've been looking for all night. A quick question for you, Dan, from Larry, in terms of, and you're in that unique position of you're working with a bunch of different types of spirits and a bunch of different types of barrels. Do you what goes into your thought process in terms of matching a spirit to a barrel type? Are there certain things that you go, what are you looking for when you say, okay, that spirit has got X, Y, Z, that's going to work with, 1, 2, 3?
Good question. Really good question. At this stage, I do put quite a lot of thought into pairing specific spirits with specific barrels, but I also do like to throw the wild card in there. I do like to experiment. There are going to be some things that just aren't going to work, so you don't push it too hard. You don't try and make something work if you know it's not going to work. But looking at oak varieties more than seasonings, looking at American oak, looking at French oak, and even looking at Spanish oak, which I have quite a few of as well. I like to look at the different spice components that you're going to get from these different oak varieties and whether or not that's going to actually impart a huge flavour on the end product, not so much the spirit that's going in there, but the end product that you're going to hopefully get out of the cask. It's a lot of fun, but I do generally put quite a lot of a thought process into what I put into what cask, and I've got some just simply beautiful casks at the moment, which when I know they're on the way, I get really excited about them. And there's specifically 3 100-litre Spanish oak heavy char PX casks, which at one of them at 9 months old, unpeated, was simply magnificent, really magnificent. It was, it was not whiskey yet, legally or by pallet ready to bottle, but it was just displaying some absolutely incredible flavours at 9 months. So it's really exciting to think about the different styles, whether if you look at, as I said, I have 20 litre, 25 litre, 35 litre, 40 litre, 50 litre, 60 litre, 100 litre, American oak, French oak, Spanish oak, Armenian or Russian oak. I have red wine casks. I have Oloroso. I have PX. I have Pera. I have Tawny. I have wheated bourbon, low rye bourbon, high rye bourbon, and rye whiskey casks. And then I have some other weird and wonderful bits and pieces. I also have about 700 or 800 litres of Tawny that's come from South Australia. I've got a couple of 100 litres of PX as well. And I've been experimenting with tipping casks and then filling them with fortifieds, putting them into my garage, which is known as the hot box. It gets up to 50 degrees in summer in the hot box, and re-seasoning and sweetening and syruping up these casks and then using them again. And it's been working quite well. I've learnt quite a lot from Mr. Timothy Duckett. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, guys. I've got to let the dog out or he's going to pee on the floor.
Yeah. And while Dan stands up there, that was quite an impressive, inventory of things that he's got. But I just feel bad for him because we all know whiskey's dead and gin is the future. I just think,
I was just.
the society knows that, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what? Yeah, we've done a bunch of gins lately. What's going on? What's
I know for sure that Alex only drinks gin.
Well,
Is there gin in that Lafroig bottle? What's going on here?
I did finish my Taco Tequila Tuesday with gin martini last night.
Is there any other type of martini?
Shaken, right?
Yeah. No. Quick question from Adam there. First time listener and so impressed. I think that's probably not by me, probably by the other three people in this stream. But where can we get stock of Highwayman? Can't find it in Melbourne. Yeah, because the first 5 batches have come and gone directly through the Highwayman websites in, a grand total of 12 minutes combined or something silly like that.
Yeah.
When Dan gets back, we might ask him about what's coming next, because I heard a rumor he was bottling a batch today. So today because he's got a real job.
Yeah. So today I heard that he was bottling batch 6. So do we have a date for the next round of releases, or do you have how they're being released? Are you going through AWAS again?
That's a secret. That shall be released very soon.
What can you give us?
I probably won't release batches 6, 7, and 8 all at the same time, because that was a logistical headfuck, doing batches 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 nights in a row. I will probably release batch 6 towards the end of August, I would say, but we shall see. And then batch 7 will be possibly the week after that, and batch 8 the week after that. Just because trying to get everything packaged and freighted to everyone is not really easy when it's basically just me doing it all. I don't have a team. I don't have any employees at all. So it's me doing everything, and it's a lot of work. It really is a lot of work. So yeah, for all those people on different forums and Facebook groups that whinge about not getting their bottle within 24 hours, this one's for you, motherfuckers.
Cool.
Hey, all right. So everything, according to you, is wonderful and happy and amazing in your little Highwayman world. Talk to me about the biggest challenge you've had going from an ambassador to now being a distiller and producing your own whiskey. What's been the thing that you did not expect to happen that you were like, yep, no, that got me?
COVID's probably the biggest one. I didn't expect that to happen. But having said that, I think just what I was, to reiterate on what I was saying before, I don't have a team. I don't have employees. Every single thing is me. So whether it's answering emails, whether it's bottling, whether it's, distilling, filling casks, whether it's handwriting every single label, whether it's dipping every single bottle, whether it's blowing up each bladder with a foot pump and hand assembling the boxes and taping them up and entering everything into it. There's just a lot of work. There is a lot of work. So, for people that think that there's this magic team of Santa's little helpers that help to get all of the bottles to people really quickly with small operations, it just doesn't exist. It's me doing everything. So yeah,
that's a really interesting point. I mean, all like the three, and in fact, like the four, if we include Milne, who's not here tonight on the round table, are all like love whiskey. We live and breathe whiskey, but we don't make the stuff, and we come from different sort of aspects of it. And like personally, we've had this discussion on previous roundtables. I couldn't think of anything worse than making this stuff. I don't have the mindset for it. I don't have the skill set for it.
This is where we sort of split a bit, because I'm in the Scotty camp, and I don't have the mindset or the skill set or the desire to make whiskey. I never have, but I fully appreciate those who do. It's like which is the lower half of my screen here, obviously. With the Dan and Alex side, because that's kind of like that. Yeah, I enjoy talking about it. I enjoyed being an ambassador for it, and I enjoy the marketing and development of the spirit. But I don't enjoy the
And some people have it in them, but I think I think Matt and I, we love talking about it. We love getting up in front of people and like telling those stories. Like, how have you gone from being in front of not just a new group every night, but often like 3 or 4 groups of people every night, you know, when you do bar tours and then a consumer facing tasting, to being in, you know, somewhere making it. And, you know, stills are great. I love watching them, and then I love leaving them the next day. But like just watching that spit run tasting, like, because it's a different mindset. Like how have you sort of adapted to that, and maybe a bit of insight to people who have that ambition of, I want to make whiskey? Like, what are the realities of that?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it's very different for me than it would be for somebody that works and runs a distillery full-time 7 days a week. For me, I have the distillery on Saturdays. So we do full production, as in making the spirit itself, on Saturdays. That's why I'm currently producing about 250 litres approximately a month. Every other day is spent filling barrels or tipping barrels or bottling or labelling, so that's what I do. And I actually really enjoyed that side of it. I love to play with casks. I've always loved to play with casks. I do think that I just don't have it in me to be a full-time distiller. I'm not a distiller. You know, I make the cuts on my spirit, but I don't classify myself to be a distiller. I work with my nose and with my palate, and I really love working with casks. I always have, whether it's, you know, in Japan, whether it's Isla or Ireland, whether it's in Kentucky, Tasmania, that I've always been fascinated with barrels and casks. It's always been something that I've truly loved. The smell, the taste, the alchemy, the mystery, the romance of working with barrels and casks has always been something that I've absolutely loved, and it will always be something that I will work with and really enjoy and love working with. So I have to agree with you in a certain aspect with both Scotty and Matt, that there's no way I could work as a distiller full time. I just don't. I would find it a little boring. I don't have the commitment to just sit there and just do that one specific thing. So yeah, I like I said, in some aspects I do agree with you, but there are other parts that I really love and that I will always continue to love, and that is, you know, working with the actual whiskey itself, working with the barrels itself. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Very, very different to what I'm used to, but I've launched during COVID lockdown, so I haven't even had a chance to actually get out there and speak to people and taste my whiskey with people and see their reaction. So we'll see what happens in the next year or two. Hopefully we can get out of this dystopian reality that we are currently locked.
There's a few offerings for help if people are willing to work for whiskey, if you need some stuff bottled. And a quick g'day to Daniel. I believe it's Daniel from Dubbo, who always comes to the tastings we do out there when I can travel and do that sort of stuff. So, you know, put the word out and people will come from Dubbo will converge on Byron Bay to help you bottle whiskies.
I think my mum just sent me a text saying, there you go, you can go make that whiskey. She's like, apply for the job.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's right. I believe that if you do venue tasting, that's going to be hopefully with one of our venues, right?
Hopefully, if it's ever allowed, ever again.
Ever again, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
all it
starting.
needs 20 people.
It's starting to become a very weird reality that we're living in. Thanks, Melbourne, and
that's not fair. That's not fair.
It's here. It's here in Sydney. We just haven't found it properly yet.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. Well,
I just hope that we're back to some sense of reality by the end of the year. I really do.
Don't we all?
It's an interesting thing. I mean, you obviously would have had. I mean, we spoke about plans of, you know, doing tastings in the oak barrel room and all that sort of stuff, which end of last year and when all this was happening, ripped up and thrown out the window. Like, how do you now plan for the end of the year and more particularly 2021 when you don't know what 2021 looks like? Like, can you give us a bit of insight into the thought process and the conversation that every distiller in the country, from the biggest to the smallest, is having right now?
I wouldn't like to speak for anyone else, but I can tell you for myself, I have no plan until things change. And to be honest, I've stopped watching the news because the fucking clowns, otherwise known as politicians, that change, and it's not their fault. Yeah, okay, it's their fault. They just change the rules and regulations and laws and what we can do and can't do on a daily basis, and it's really disheartening. So I've stopped watching that until we get some sort of positive feedback that we can actually start to return to a normal sense of life. Once I start to get a normal sense of reality back in, I can actually start to look at coming down to Melbourne, Sydney, up to Brisbane, Gold Coast, doing tastings in Byron, and probably Adelaide, hopefully by the end of the year. And that'll be my plan for the end of the year. I'd really like to do at least one visit up and down the East Coast to each major city, maybe Canberra and possibly Tassie as well. If I
Milne.
If I can't
the
do
Hobart
that,
Milne, yeah, that one.
How about Milne?
Yeah, cool.
yeah,
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah. So yeah, that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to do sort of a few different places in Queensland, New South Wales, and Vic by the end of the year. If I can get Tassie and Adelaide, maybe. If not, I'll do Tassie, Adelaide, and Perth next year. Alex and I are trying to put together a really cool little tasting for 20 people at Milne in Sydney, where everyone gets a bottle and we sit down and talk about the whiskies, have a little nibble, and everyone goes along their merry way. We were talking about doing it in August, but now that doesn't look like it's going to happen. So yeah, I'm sure both Alex and I will keep you posted when that will happen. It won't be if, it'll be when. So yeah,
That's
we just got
it.
to wait for things to change.
A couple of requests for virtual tastings, and friend of the stream, friend of everyone's, Yao from the Elysian says, we'd love to have you back, bud. So as soon as Melbourne's open, I reckon there's a seat for you behind the bar or in front of the bar, wherever they want it. But we seem to have gone a fair bit over our hour-long times tonight. So maybe we should go round the grounds for final thoughts and what you're drinking, what you've polished off tonight while we've been there. I've done a fair chunk into an Adams, an old school 50-litre French oak sherry cask, that cask number 18 that was much bigger than it was, and and again, as I mentioned very early, a bottle from the Elysian, the Aston Morris Ben Nevis Glen Murray, is now empty. Round the grounds.
I'm still on the Frog triple wood.
Still on my Ardmore.
Yeah.
I started off with Highwayman batch 6. Batch 6. This is 2 20-litre French oak Apera cask, 3 years old, bottled at 55.5% cask strength. It's delicious, nutritious, and scrumdiddlyicious. I'm really enjoying that, and currently getting into Nico's Benriach. It's a peated. Is it Madeira or Marsala?
I think it's a Marsala finish.
Marsala finish. I really like it. It's possibly the best peated Benriach I've had. I've had lots and lots of Benriachs. I've had lots of peated Benriachs. The peat is really well integrated with the overall flavour of the whiskey. So if you get a chance, jump on and buy one of those. I don't think it's going to last that long. They should be sold out in the next week or two. So that's me.
Love that distillery, and love what they can do with the broad of having no preconceptions of what Benriach could be. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If there's any other questions, feel free to leave them on the stream. We can flick them off to Dan and get them back to you. But mates, thank you for jumping on. I know that you, as we've established, you do have a real job, which is more than the other three of us can say. So thank you for taking the time out tonight. And it's good to, I don't think I've seen your face in the flesh for, 6, 7, 8 months, maybe more.
Been a while.
That previous life that we used to know everything, it's before and after. So it was definitely before.
Pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Yeah, bloody oath.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. Thank you for everyone on the streams. And we will catch you all soon. Next week, probably for the roundtable. Don't know what it looks like. Don't know when it'll be, but whatever.
Look it up.
Thanks, guys, and good night, Mum. Good night, Grandma. Good night, Fred.
Thanks for having me, guys. Cheers.
And
hope to see you for a whiskey soon.
Goodbye, let it help.